Well, hey, podcast listeners. In episode 54 of the Pixar Post Podcast, we're going to chat about Cars 3 news. We're going to talk about teaser trailers, soundtracks. Boy, oh boy, are we going to get into the two soundtracks. Then we're releasing our first interview with Jay Shuster, Jude Brownbill, and Michael Comet from the Cars 3 press day that we were out at the end of March, early April. And those are three Pixarians who presented the next generation of racers was their topic, so digging into the design, rigging, and animation of the characters. We'll also continue with our Ask Pixar Post segment, where you can get to know us a little bit more by asking us some questions and emailing them in. And all that fun stuff. So I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie, and let's get started.
Absolutely. That was a big introduction. So
yes, that's a lot of
you
stuff.
know what we usually start with, right?
Trivia.
That's right.
And I got some trivia for you.
All right. You think you're ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay. Would you like...
But no. Do you think you're ready? Because I've got some good ones. Although I think two of mine might be kind of easy.
I'm not sure. So how about, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
No, you can go first.
Okay, your first question is, and remember, give a couple seconds so somebody can answer if they're listening. Okay. So what is Pixar's longest running film to date?
Oh, man. Cars 2.
That is incorrect.
Cars 1?
Yeah.
Really?
What's the length?
Well, it's over 116 minutes.
Okay.
Because I know Cars 2 is 116 minutes, I believe.
It's an hour and 56 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. How about that?
That's a long film.
Okay. Would you like to give me yours?
Okay. How many do you have?
2.
I have 3.
Okay.
Okay. So, Luigi's license plate.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean? Would you like me to tell you what his license plate numbers are?
Sure.
They are 445-108.
445108.
Yeah, he's writing it down on paper so he can see it visually. What does Luigi's license plate mean?
I thought I would have known this right off the bat, but I actually do not.
Okay, this is the one I thought was going to be kind of easy.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, now I'm feeling really sheepish about not knowing this right off the bat. Because, they always do most of them as the actors, the birthdays. Yeah. But I'm like 45, 44. Ooh.
Yeah, no. All right.
Okay, give it to me.
The latitude and longitude of the Ferrari factory in Modena, Italy.
That is awesome.
Isn't that cool?
I did not know that one for some reason.
I feel like we've talked about that before.
If we did, I didn't remember it.
Oh, okay.
All right, hit me with the next one.
Okay, so, this is the next one. Okay. Was Finn Mcmissile cut from the original Cars film? Cars 1. Was Finn Mcmissile supposed to be in the original Cars film? True or false?
My gut says false.
No, it is true.
Oh my God, what the heck?
Lightning McQueen and Sally were supposed to go on a date to a drive-in. And up on the screen at the drive-in movie theater was supposed to be a spy movie featuring Finn Mcmissile.
Oh, interesting.
John Lasseter had to cut the scene, but he made it into Cars 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really good. So I just watched, before we went back out to that press event, I watched the director's commentary, which, by the way, on the Cars DVD, if you haven't watched it, is awesome because it gives you one full track of just John Lasseter speaking about the movie. Then you can watch the entire movie a second time
with the producer and
with the rest.
Yeah.
Tons of people. There's like 5, 6, 7, 8.
That's right. There was
it's
8 people.
Yeah, it's like a
people.
big group. Animators, lighters, everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get to watch it 2 times. They did not mention that.
Yeah.
In any of those. I need to check your sources, ma'am.
It's true.
All right. How many previously released Pixar short films are referenced that you can see in Cars as Easter eggs? Feel free to try to name them.
Okay. Luxo Jr. No.
Well, if you're gonna say them, where are they too?
Oh gosh, I want to say there's 3.
Okay.
Am I right with the number?
You're right with the number.
Okay. Bounden?
Yes. Where's that?
Oh gosh, I don't know where it is, but
Okay.
I just feel like Bounden.
Okay, yes,
there.
it is.
Oh, I'm blanking on the other two.
Okay, For the Birds.
Oh, gosh.
That's an obvious one.
That's an
During
obvious
Life is a
one.
Highway right at the beginning.
That's embarrassing.
So Knick Knack is in Lizzie's curio shop when they're giving Lightning McQueen his like revamp before he goes to do his big race.
A good one.
And then the camper, there's one of the RVs. His name's Bud, after Bud Lucky, and it has the jackalope from Boundin' on the background, which you should know.
I should know because
we have the diecast.
Yeah, we have the diecast of it.
All right, what's your final question?
Okay, final question.
Yes, let's hope I can get one of them right.
Was there, true or false, was there a hidden Mickey reference in Cars 2?
Oh, geez. Is this an official one, or is this literally like somebody's like, I saw a shape that looks like it could be a Mickey?
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
Then that's a yes.
Okay. Okay, and if so, what is the reference?
No idea.
Okay.
Too tricky.
It's actually Uncle Topolino. In Italian, Topolino means mouse.
Okay.
Small mouse.
Okay. I guess that could be.
Yeah, so it's not official, but people...
I wonder why else they would have used that. Couldn't that have been...
Yeah, I don't know.
Could have been a Ratatouille reference.
Could have been. Yeah, small mouse.
Topolino?
Yeah, I don't know.
Topolino.
I just thought that one was interesting because I had never heard that one before.
All right, there you go. Could be. All right, so let's talk about some. No more trivia. Let's get down to some business here. So Cars.
I stumped you good this week.
That's an understatement. Cars 3 news. So if you haven't seen the teasers, the trailers, the TV spots are in full swing. If you haven't checked them out in the Pixar Post forum, you should absolutely do that. There's a lot of those, like I mentioned, the TV spots. There's special looks, like the Movie Surfers one, where they do a look at the Demolition Derby, the Crazy 8 sequence, which is awesome. So if you haven't done that, forum.pixarpost.com. And then you can go scroll down to the feature films, and then it's Cars 3, and it's the one that has the most comments, and it's like 9 pages of trailers and teasers that people are finding these little TV spots and Facebook advertisements and everything. So check it out. Just wanted to point that out because there's a lot out there.
Oh, there's so much footage right now.
I know.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, we're less than a month out, so.
I know, it's so exciting.
It is.
It's almost hard to believe that it's here.
It's almost here.
We've been talking about it since like 2013 when Michael Wallace first kind of leaked that it was in development. And,
right.
Yeah.
And now it's like, gosh, it's like next month. It's like just a couple weeks away.
Yeah. I know. It's pretty cool. All right, so the soundtrack, though.
I was just going to say, and also on June 16th,
perfect segue.
2 soundtracks.
Correct.
2. It's like we're getting a crew one.
Now, hang on a minute here, though.
I know.
Hang on a minute. It's definitely not a cast and crew one.
I know, but I'm just saying, because it's going to be like a score and a regular soundtrack.
Correct, but they kind of did that for the first Cars. So the question of why 2 Cars soundtracks came up. It was definitely in the forum. I've read it on other websites too. So why did they break it up? Any theories? Because I have a breakdown here.
Okay, I think they're just separating it from not the more mainstream kind of music, but yes, the more mainstream rather than the score.
Okay.
They're keeping them separate.
So my first thought was, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much content, they needed to split it between 2 discs. Stay with me. So Randy's score of the film comes in at 47 minutes approximately.
Okay.
And the lyric-based...
That's the 22 tracks.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's a big one for the score. And then the lyric-based, or you said like the more mainstream...
songs.
That one comes in at 27 minutes. So if you just take those 2 approximations, that equates to 74 minutes. So my initial thought was a CD can hold, like when CDs first came out, they can hold 74 minutes. So I'm like, wow, did they literally put it over by a couple seconds and they had to figure it out? And then I was like, well, no, because new CDs can hold 80 minutes at 700 megabyte. But then I was like, well, wait a minute. The whole thought process that my brain was taking me down because we came from a world of music is pointless. It's digital only.
Right. So
that was pointless. But this is the first thing that came to my mind.
That's funny that you were thinking, because we met at a record store.
Right. But I'm thinking about it. I'm like, why would it be 2? So then I have to go with essentially that it's the same reason that you said, that it kind of separates the 2 audiences. They're probably expecting some decent sales off of
the more mainstream one.
Not that it shouldn't be added into the score one, but the first Cars soundtrack, because of all of the hits, the poppy songs that were on it, it did sell a lot. It did well for them. So I'm guessing they're going to think the same thing on this. And it's priced fairly. It's $6.99 for the all music, the pop song one, if you will.
And aren't there bonus tracks? There's 2 bonus tracks too, I think.
I think it's weird that they're called bonus tracks. The whole CD has 8 tracks.
And that's including the bonus tracks, right?
Yes. So
okay, that's what I thought.
To call them 6 tracks with 2 bonus tracks seems crazy talk to me. Let's just call it 8 tracks.
It's 8 tracks. So you're basically getting one for free.
One for free? What do you mean?
Well, $6.99.
Oh, if you bought them each individually.
Well, I mean, they'd probably be like $1.29.
They're always $1.29, yeah, most of the time now.
So.
But yeah, that was interesting to me. I feel like I would have loved to have seen it be 10 tracks.
Yeah, well.
Then it feels like an album. Now, granted, at that point,
it's an EP.
At that point, it's an extended play. It is kind of like
an extended. It's a 6-track EP with 2 bonus discs. All right. 2 bonus tracks.
You're right. If you
hidden tracks.
If you hidden tracks, yeah, they're unlisted. They're just the really long ones that just have to go.
Yeah.
So, anyways, just an interesting thing to think about. But I do appreciate that it's not trying to go overpriced with it. Since it's digital, though, it all could have fit in one.
Yeah.
I don't know why they had to do it.
I like the breakdown. I like the 2 separate ones.
I would have liked to have seen it together.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we differ.
That's true. Okay, so speaking of Randy's score and all the soundtracks that we've been talking about, at the press event, there was an opportunity where we were able to talk with Brian Fee, who's the director, Kevin Rear, the producer, and then Andrea Warren, who's the co-producer. And during that, I asked the question about the score and soundtrack. So let's go ahead and just take a quick listen to that, even though I'm not going to share the entire panel breakdown yet.
Hey, TJ from Pixar Post. Just wanted to ask really quickly about the upcoming scoring session with Randy Newman, and also inquiring if you can expand on that as far as the music that we can expect to hear, and will the soundtrack also have some of those iconic songs like the first one had with Sheryl Crow, or even the James Taylor song that Randy Newman also wrote?
Yes, Randy's back to score it, and we do. You didn't see the beginning of the movie. We do have our version of the Sheryl Crow song. We have our version of Needle Drops, and having bands do new songs for us, and having bands do covers for us has always been part of the Cars world. So we're definitely continuing that, keeping that going. We have plenty of music that's not Randy's, but besides the score. So it's going to be a cool soundtrack.
Really cool people.
All right, so that was the question I was able to ask them, and then Brian Fee obviously answered the majority of that there. I was excited because at that time we didn't know anything about the soundtrack yet.
Nothing, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't know if any of these songs were going to be in there, so I was kind of holding that in my back pocket, and obviously we now know some of that. So a lot of people, when I was reading different comments on our post and on the forum, people didn't necessarily know who all of these new artists were, and they didn't necessarily know all of the songs. So what I did is I went through and I took clips of the original song as well as the new artist that's doing it, or if it's just an original, it's just that artist. So I wanted to give a couple tastes, and we're going to run through the tracks in order to give you an idea of what these artists and what the songs might sound like. Sound like a decent idea?
Yeah, let's listen.
Okay, so the first song is called Run That Race by Dan Auerbach.
And this is going to be the opening scene song.
Correct.
This is going to open the film.
So a couple people have actually also mentioned too in the forum that they think that song has already been sampled or heard something from in some of the teasers.
Okay.
You can kind of hear it in the background going like, you gotta run that race. So they think that might be the song. Don't mind my awesome rendition.
Yeah,
there.
that was stellar.
Thank you very much. I'm going on tour this fall.
Oh my goodness.
That being said, though, I have a tiny clip of it, but it's hard to hear because it's always overlaid with vocals and everything. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to play a little teeny clip just twice in a row of what I think that little segment might be from the song.
Okay.
Cars 3 in 3D June 16th, rated G. Cars 3 in 3D June 16th, rated G.
Okay, so I have to say, while I was playing that clip, Julie's over here crying because she's making fun of...
laughing.
Because, yeah. Because she's making fun of my ridiculous rendition
of him singing the Run the Race song.
If that's what it was. But yeah, so enjoy that.
Yeah, so the clip that we just heard, I am uncertain that is the Run the Race song.
Kind of sounds like the word "run that race," though, doesn't it?
You want to sing it again for us?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
I don't know. I don't think it is.
Okay.
It just doesn't seem. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it is.
Okay. Well, let's also take a clip. Listen to a clip at Dan Auerbach, just so you can get a sense for what his voice might be like as well.
Oh, we should have done that first now, because now I'm gonna change my mind.
Well, I don't think that was him. I think that was a whole production, like background singers and stuff. I think he would be doing
the style.
Got it.
Okay.
Well, the style's totally.
Yeah, that's true.
They're doing a song for a soundtrack. A lot of times they do stuff that's different styles. So
okay, well, let's listen to it.
All right.
I can almost hear one coming. I just waiting on.
You gotta run. Huh?
Yeah, actually, I dig that sound. I feel like that's a great, like how the styling and how the music was for that song, that clip we just heard, I think is like a great way to open up the film. I feel like it's just like everything's easy going, everything's going his way. That's just kind of, I'm just saying.
I'm shaking my head no.
I know, but I'm just saying that's the kind of feel I get. Like everything's
well, that
good.
would be if it was that particular song for sure. It could work.
I know, but I feel like that's kind of how it's going to be. It's kind of going to be like everything's running his way, going his way.
All right.
Before all heck breaks loose.
Or does it start like that other song would be like, that would be like a big, like, you know, like you got to run this race and it's just like hitting it right from the get-go.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll see. All right, the next track on the album is an original track by Tom Petty called King's Highway, and it's actually going to be covered by James Bay. And if a lot of people know him, I'm not going to sing it. He sings the song Let It Go.
Yeah, but not that Let It Go.
That Let It Go.
The
Other one. That one. So let's give a sample for King's Highway by Tom Petty, and then we'll just follow it up with a sample of James Bay, another song that I found that was kind of along those lines. Not really, because he doesn't do that same type of style, but you get a sense.
Left for us to believe, oh, I'll wait the day. Good fortune comes our way, and we ride down the King's Highway. I guess the time, those distant days are flashing by.
All right, so what are your thoughts there?
I dig it. I think that'll be a good fit.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny, I haven't heard King's Highway in forever. I mean, a very long time. I'm not a huge Tom Petty fan, but that works big time. If I think of that Tom Petty feel, they're those songs that just kind of just cut right through, and they're perfect for driving because it's just a straight beat.
Just driving music.
Yeah, it's just a straight beat that just goes, and then Tom Petty's got that little Dylan-y kind of thing going on, so it's just like, you know, you're rambling.
Yeah.
You're going through the hills.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. I'm very excited for the next track, which is called Truckaroo and the Thunder Hollow Breakdown. Those are two individual ones, so track 3 and 4, both by Brad Paisley and said to be instrumentals. As much as I would love if he sang a song like he did in the other Cars movies, there's just... I love the fact that he's still part of it. We obviously... Well, you wrote it up in the post that Brad's going to be part of it, and, you know, they said
asked him back.
They wanted him to be a part of it. Yeah,
and they
absolutely.
wanted him to do an instrumental sound.
Yeah, so...
Now, I have a question for you, actually.
Okay.
Because you actually watched The Crazy 8.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the clips that I saw at the event.
Now, was there music?
There was, but so much of it was temp. Okay. I don't know what was real and what wasn't.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask you. I was like, did you... Because you've seen it, so like, what, you know... Right.
Another fun side note is how I figured out so much of it was temp. They talked about that some of it was and wasn't. But while I was sitting at a table talking with Brian, Randy Newman was calling him, and they were talking about the score.
Okay.
So he was actually like writing it and trying to get approvals for stuff right then during this event. So it was one of those things where I was like, okay, well, clearly if they haven't recorded it, any score that I heard was temp. But I think I would have heard Brad Paisley. Being a fan of him since the 90s, I would have heard it and been like, this sounds very Brad Paisley. Because when he does instrumentals, he usually has 1 or 2 instrumentals per disc, per all of his albums that he has. And he even has one that's almost exclusively instrumentals. It only has a couple vocal tracks. So I know his stuff really well, and I feel like I would have known and heard that style if I did hear it.
It'll be curious to see when we go see it again, if that's what you heard.
And if I even remember it. I mean, because there was so much to soak into.
That's true.
But yeah, you're right.
But I'd been meaning to ask you that after we heard that he was doing 2 instrumentals and that it was going to be that scene that you had seen.
Yeah, that I had seen?
Yeah.
But I actually want to play a clip of one of his instrumental tracks. In fact, one of my favorites. It's called Munster Rag. So check it out. Okay, so when that clip was playing, Julie said, I think we were dating, or I feel like we were dating when that came out. Well, yeah, you bought me that album. That's off of his Part 2 album.
Oh, well, see, I knew I did that. Welcome.
Yeah. So I think if I think of that scene, and you...
What year did that come out?
I think that was 99 or 2000 or 2001.
Okay.
I'm not remembering off the top of my head. Now that I think about it, I think it was 2001.
Okay.
But regardless, it's one of those years. And so I think a lot of people have seen the trailers where they got the crazy the cars going back and forth.
Oh, it's in every trailer.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like if you kind of think about the craziness of a derby, you could hear something like that going in the background, right?
I literally, when I heard that he was doing those 2 tracks for that specific scene, that's all I hear is his guitar.
Exactly.
That fast, like
he's
kind of twangy guitar, but it's like kind of like tight and tinny. It's hard to explain. Like,
exactly. It's a
perfect.
very specific. Yes, you're right. It's rock, it's twang, it's country.
And it fits like a derby kind of atmosphere.
Which is perfect because if you think of a derby, you in my mind I think down south.
Yeah.
I think country music, but then I think like wild country music.
Yes.
And that's why Brad Paisley fits it.
Good word.
Fits it perfectly. All right, so the next one that's in the list is Glory Days, originally by Bruce Springsteen. So we're going to listen to a clip of the ultra iconic Glory Days, and then Andra Day, who is actually doing the cover of it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you for filling me in on that.
Welcome.
I'm going to go ahead and play a clip of that now. Okay, so that's a little different.
I like her voice. I feel like it's going to be kind of haunting at the Glory Days. Like she's going to be singing the Glory Days song, but I feel like it's kind of going to make you feel like, how do I get back there?
Yeah, she's definitely going to have a little bit like the haunting side of it, right?
Like,
I mean,
can I ever get back to that? It's kind of like Sia. In a way, it reminds me of.
I mean, she's definitely has like that newer kind of vintage sound that so many people have essentially since Amy Winehouse, with Adele and who am I thinking of? X's and O's, Elle King, and then she's kind of in that vein.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do wonder. I think it'll be actually a really piercing rendition of Glory Days.
Yes, good word. Wild, piercing. What's next?
I don't know. Let's see what comes.
Let's see what the next track is.
Well, the next track is Ride, which maybe you'd like to sing that one.
Yeah, I sing it a lot.
Yeah.
Our son likes that song a lot.
So I'm not going to play that one because we've heard it. You can sample it right now. That's the next track. And then the next couple are Drive My Car, which is originally by the Beatles. And that's actually going to be covered by George Blanco. And I think this one is going to be really, really good. I'm going to sample both of those artists. Well, artists. You should know who the Beatles are.
I wanna be famous, start to scream, but you can do something in between. Maybe you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star.
All right, so obviously we know the Beatles. This is George Blanco next to get a sample of his voice.
Oh, here it comes. I'm so damn close. Don't let go. I got the summer soul.
Now it's kind of jarring between those two versions because we've got, the more subdued.
Well, you've got,
and
pop from the heyday and pop from now.
Right, ultra produced, in your face, with the beats. But yeah, I wonder how he's going to do it. But I can hear his voice having a very, again, here, you want to know, a very crisp, clean sound that's going to go well with that song. But I think they're going to change that song up a lot more.
I think so too. I think it's going to have just the more modern.
Yeah, I feel like some of them. I mean, I guess this is a pretty dumb comment to say, but I'm going to say it because it's obvious. I think some of the songs are going to match. Some of them are going to be their own versions of it. But I thought it.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
I think this one will probably be changed maybe the most.
Yeah, I kind of feel like
kind of like how Sia did with Finding Dory. Unforgettable.
Right. Yeah.
Which kind of made it darker. I think this one will just be a little. I don't know.
Right.
I just feel like it'd be different with the beats more so than how he performs it.
Right. So the last track on the disc, and hopefully you're enjoying these little cut clips, is Freeway of Love by Aretha Franklin, Detroit's own. And Leah Delaria, who actually voices Miss Fritter, is shocked me. I didn't know.
Also on Orange is the New Black.
Correct. Yeah, I didn't know she actually sang and had albums out. She has albums of classics and does very jazz style stuff. So I'm interested to hear how an 80s pop track of Freeway of Love with a ton of energy and upbeatness is going to turn into I don't know if she's just going to belt it out. It would go kind of opposite of what she has done album wise, but it's possible for sure. All right, let's check out a couple clips.
She can sing. Mrs. Fritter can sing.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how they can do that.
It's funny, when we were listening to it and listening to the Aretha version, I was like, oh gosh, I can see this being the song for Cruise and Lightning Training. But then listening to Lena, I'm like, oh. Leah, I'm sorry. I was like, oh, what?
Yeah.
How I can't visualize a scene.
I know, I can't either.
Song,
I can't
with
either.
Her vocals.
Right. I do kind of hope that they keep it. I mean, because I when we were sampling it, I was telling you, I'm like, boy, I jammed out to that Freeway of Love in the 80s when I was a kid. I think I did maybe even a jump roping competition in that song, and PYT by Michael Jackson were my twos that I did my jumps to.
But I like the jazz song, the sound, because that's the kind of genre of music I prefer.
Yeah, but I don't know how you can take Freeway of Love and slow it down that much.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Because the lyrics wouldn't make sense. We're riding on a freeway.
Yeah, I can't visualize a scene that I would hear it that slow.
Exactly.
I don't know. We'll see.
I feel like it's almost like it's going to be like a montage one. Like we're going to the next thing.
Yeah. I don't know. But she could surprise us and sing, belt it like you said.
I know. You never know. I mean, she could. It sounds like her tone could be kind of there. It just probably wouldn't be as gritty as Aretha. Because don't try it.
Yeah.
All right. So we feel like we're good on the soundtrack?
I think so. I think we broke it down.
We definitely did. We definitely did. But I hope it gives everybody a good sampling as far as, you know, the sounds from before and what the covers are going to be, you know, how they're going to be now. So we shall see. We're very excited. In less than a month, we'll all know a lot more. All right. So the main function, our main piece of this podcast is actually our Cars 3 interview that we had, which was one of the many sessions that we had at the Cars 3 press event. This particular one, again, was with Jay Shuster, who's the production designer, Michael Comet, who's the character supervisor, and Jude Brownbill, who's the directing animator. I actually had a one-on-one interview with them as well, so we'll play a clip from that after the group interview. But they did, and if you've listened to our podcast before, in this session, they're showing some screenshots of different things, and they've got a presentation that's going. We still felt like, again, we always kind of say this, we always still felt like you can still pull stuff out of it. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a sample of a few things that you might hear in this to make it worth your while to definitely listen to this thing. So with Jay Shuster, you're going to hear... also, I wanted to call out that there is a guy that is sitting next to me, and I don't know from what media site he was from or anything, but he coughs several times, so it made editing it a lot of fun, because while they're talking, you hear like several times, and then I could literally see my vocal meter. He was breathing so heavily that I could see it, so I had to like turn my body sideways to block it. So it made it a lot of fun.
Interesting.
In case you wanted to know. So they talk about, throughout this, again, the designs for Lightning, Cruz, and Jackson. And I wanted to point out that one thing that's not mentioned in the interview, but wanted to bring it up here, because they talk so much about Cruz, is how different Cruz could have been in the movie. So in other sessions, we heard she was originally a male character that was a farmer. So I don't know, lots of farming going on at Pixar for a while there. And in that version, McQueen had his identity stolen. That was the original version, the old one that Michael Wallace was talking about, like I've already kind of prefaced. That was back to Route 99, all in Southern California.
Right.
And in fact, in our Art of Cars 3 book review from Chronicle Books, if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. We'll put it in the show notes. But yeah,
images
they show images of some of the original production work that Bill Cohn was doing. So it's really kind of cool that you can see some of that. And then I heard some of it at the session as well, but wanted to at least call that out. So Jay starts out, Michael Comet will come up, and he talks about that his role as the character supervisor is, you know, converting the character art and putting it into the computer. He's essentially digitally sculpting, shading, and painting, rigging, adding articulation to the characters to get it ready for the animators. And he talks about, we did the Friday fun fact of like that they added a lighting control to Jackson Storm's S, or it's a backwards S for the hurricane symbol. But they added that so that way it would almost kind of like pop and really glow when he's going by. And then also Jude Brownbill will be the last one that ends it out, again, directing animator. She talks about how the film introduces a lot of characters. And this is something that got me really excited when I was in the session, because it's something that I always talk about. I love a big cast in a movie.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, because I feel like, you know, if I think about Toy Story, you know, there's so many different characters. And the one thing that I love about that specifically is that it keeps the writing. You have to write fast. It has to be back and forth really quick.
It has to be quick.
It has to be
quick-witted.
Exactly. And I think that the pace it works perfectly with some of the scenes that we saw in this movie. So that's why I feel like it's great to have those types of things, that speed that's in there, and to get introduced to a lot of characters. So the character folks had a lot of work that they had to do. So, okay, let's listen to this interview, and then we'll catch you on the backside.
On Cars 3. And indeed, just what I said before, I will be covering the art section of this presentation in our assembly line here today. Here I am in my office, walls plastered with drawings. That's what I do every day. I just go in my office, close the door, hope people don't bother me. I just draw characters all day long. And let's go all the way back to 1952 to Susie the Blue Coupe. This is the film that inspired John Lasseter's original intention of this film, to put the eyes in the windshield, mouth up front, get that full face that emotes to the audience. Here is John. He, of course, established this concept of truth in materials, truth to materials. Basically, we want these cars to behave like cars. We don't want them to be squishy, rubbery looking. We want them to be steel, various metals, plastic, all that stuff. In the world of cars, materials and shapes help define that character. And that's what I'll focus on today. Show you how we get these characters onto the big screen. Let's flash back to 2006 in our first film. In that movie, we met Lightning McQueen. He was at the top of his game as a Piston Cup racer. And he was, in essence, the next generation of racer of his era. For that movie, we designed McQueen to make every other car on the track look outdated. And then flash forward to today, Cars 3. McQueen is the centerpiece of the film, so of course he's back and better than ever in his classic race trim with new graphics and a new sense of purpose. We also needed to design McQueen's rival, a next generation racer who could push McQueen to the brink of extinction. So we asked ourselves, what would a race car design in McQueen's league look like 20 years into the future? And voila, enter Jackson Storm. He's next generation. I'm sure you've seen him plastered all over the place these days. For a design like his, we start with a blank sheet of paper. And the goal was to use shape, paint, and graphic to create a character that contradicts McQueen in every possible way. And so at Pixar, we have this iterative design process. We got to get every idea up on the wall as fast as possible. Just get it all out there on the wall. So we do hundreds of these sketches, keeping in mind the design conceit that McQueen is round and flowing, so Storm has to be angular and sharp. After all these initial design directions and explorations, we employ the talents of folks like this. This is Jay Mays, former head of design at Ford Motor Company, who is good friends with John Lasseter. He came in and workshopped the design for Storm a couple of days at Pixar. It was super cool to have him get his very experienced eyes on this design. This is one of the designs he produced. It solidified, but more importantly, endorsed the direction we were moving in. As you can see, it's a super low profile, an aggressive shape. And we're constantly reminding ourselves that these designs are characters first and vehicles second. So we have to pay attention to the eye and mouth relationship. We can't get that windshield too raked back or angled, otherwise the character looks like it's staring up at the sky the whole time. So we got to pay attention to that angle so that we relate the eyes to the mouth and the whole thing works cohesively. And here you can see the contrast between McQueen and Storm. Of course, Storm's profile is super low to the ground as opposed to McQueen's upright posture. This is a further development of the design. What I wanted to do was maintain the essence of NASCAR stock car DNA. So I threw a little bit more mass and muscle back into the design. And then we took all these concepts and we went to the Daytona 500 in 2015 and we spoke with folks like Ray Evernham, who's actually here today. You'll hear him speak as well on the history of racing. We were basically just seeking a blessing of sorts from the people in the business. Like, were these designs good enough? Were they forward-looking enough? And he approved, and he helped push this design forward. So also, people assume our designs start in the computer, but just like the automotive world, we use clay sculpts. And what I like to say is we could design or draw this thing 1,000 times, but we still really don't know what this thing looks like in the round. So it's really important to get in 3D, get into clay, and we can't cheat in clay. That's the lesson we learned there. Again, we have to constantly remind ourselves that these are characters and not just vehicles, and always considering that relationship with the eyes and the mouth. So even in the clay process, we're taking photos of these things, overlaying them, drawing over top of them, pushing that design forward. Here, we wanted to make Storm a weapon on wheels. So here I feel like we're kind of getting towards that with the really strong creases and aggressive lines to the front. In the past the clay stage, we finally start building Storm in the computer. And this is where we start holding these characters up against each other. So we've got Storm over there. I'll make sure he looks as kind of razor-edged as possible, stealth-like, opposed to McQueen's kind of soft, muscular look. And in shots like these, we dial in the relative proportion and scale. And profiles are important because they help us identify the characters as they pass quickly in front of camera at speed on the track. Next, we looked at the graphic design of NASCAR these days, and there's a lot going on, too much. But we wanted Storm's graphics to be different, and we wanted Jackson's graphics to be as bold, as elegant as possible. Storm's character actually should read through to his graphic design. And so just as McQueen has his iconic lightning bolt, we wanted to give Storm his own icon. So we took the international symbol for hurricane and transformed that into Storm's iconic S. And then, of course, to complete the look, we specify his paint and materials. And here we have a final design, and them together on track. Storm's design achieves all we set out to do. We gave McQueen a rival that completely defines the next generation. And we exploited the shape and the paint and the graphic to yield a character that needs very few words to express his intentions. Next biggest character we designed for this film is, of course, Cruz Ramirez. She's Lightning's high-tech trainer, and she was a different design challenge altogether. Again, we started with a blank sheet of paper, but we also looked in what our colleagues were doing in the story room across the hallway. We learned a lot from story, of course, as they're writing the story. The characters take on different personalities and whatnot. Almost on a daily basis, they change in the development of these stories. So had to pay close attention to what they were doing over there. Characters' actions and mannerisms can actually spark a design direction for us in the art department. So here are a few storyboards we were looking at. Again, straight into this kind of as many drawings on a wall as possible. We really wanted Cruz to be inspired by American muscle car kind of proportions, but as well infuse her with a little bit of European sports car as well. And she was a unique design challenge, as I said before. She's not a race car, yet she's a strong female character who has to meet the next generation of race cars at their level. So we move quickly, again, from sketches into clay to solidify the directions. And while the sculpt evolves, and we're taking shots of that thing, throwing a piece of trace over it, sketching, down and dirty, always kind of tearing down, building up, redefining the shapes, making sure that eye to mouth read works. And eventually kind of get into these tighter drawings that become our model packet, is what we call it, a final model packet that we hand off to the people who are going to ultimately build this thing in the computer. And even when it's in the computer, again, we're printing these things out, drawing over them. It's just this constant honing, perfecting process. And now that we have a final Storm, we wanted Cruz to live somewhere between McQueen and Storm. So she's just got enough creases and hard edges to look modern, yet more flowing, elegant shapes. And then to finish the look, we also considered her paint, textures, reflective qualities. It all contributes to her character. And here she is in her final form. And in context with McQueen, you can see how well their designs work together, and you get a sense of their individual characters, their traits, and age just in a glance. So with that, I will turn it over to Michael Comet to talk about the further process.
All right, thank you, Jay. Good morning. My name is Michael Comet. I was one of 2 character supervisors on Cars 3. So what does the character department do? As Jay mentioned, we basically take the art and concept art from the art department, and we're the department that pulls it into the computer. And so we do basically digital sculpting, digital shade and painting, and digital rigging or articulation, which is basically setting it up kind of like it's a puppet to get it ready for animation. And I'm going to take you through those kind of 3 middle steps. We call this the character assembly line. It's just like building a real car. You kind of have to go through and go through all this process. So let's take a look with Lightning McQueen. When we first started Cars 3, the first thing we did was look at all of our old racers and old cars and bring those over. So in McQueen's case, we already have his model. And so this is basically a basic sculpt in the computer. So you can see all the details that we're putting in on the bottom of McQueen as well as the sides. And it's gray, it's flat, there's no real shading yet, there's no painting. And it really is just a sculpture. It can't move, it's not posable, it's not actually animatable yet. So after we have the model created, and again, in McQueen's case, we already had that, the next step that we do is to add color and shading. So this is just an example. This is actually Storm's wheel, but just an example of some of the various types of materials that we have. And we have a team of artists, just like we have a team of modelers, we have a team of shading and painting artists that will go through and basically create different types of materials, and we can control things like color, reflectivity, shininess, all of that. So we would then take those materials and apply them onto McQueen. So this is McQueen for Cars 3 with his shading and painting applied onto him. It's the graphics on the side, the wrap, like a real car has a wrap when they're racing. We get art from the art department, and that's applied kind of like you would apply a decal and a toy model. You could do the same thing. We're doing that in the computer virtually. So after that, shading can really change the look of the character. So this is an example of McQueen with Sterling's wrap. And you notice it's got a lot of chrome bits on it. It's got this really cool metal flake paint that's on it. And it's really interesting with Cars 3, our technology has advanced so far that everything responds very accurately. And so, for example, we have shots in the film where we've had to animate cars that were off screen just because it's being reflected in McQueen or reflected in Cruz or reflected in Storm. You see something stop moving, you're like, what was that? Oh, it's a car that we needed to animate because it's still there. Here's another example of shading. We have Light McQueen with the muddy shader from Thunder Hollow. And the model's the same. We're just adding dust and dirt and bump and all of that kind of stuff to make it look dirty. So after we model and shade the character, the next thing we have to do is we have to rig it and set it up to be animatable. So this is kind of like putting controls into a puppet to make it posable. And so this is a body calisthenic or a body pose test that we do. And we're basically looking for things that are flying off to make sure like the suspension is working, the tires are rotating, make sure the mouth and smile looks pleasing, looks appealing, the eyes and brows and all of that. We actually apply this exact animation to every car in the film. And we basically are kind of checking every car after we've rigged it. And I'll show you a little bit, some of the more behind the scenes in the future of how we rig. So this is some other technology, again, for character rigging or character setup. So in this case, McQueen just drove down the hill. The tires spin automatically. They'll steer automatically. The computer's calculating all of that for us. And then we have these controls that allow the animators to control, say, how the contact of the tire works on the ground, how much does it bulge and respond. And you can see as I move McQueen around, the tires and wheels also have some new rigging for Cars 3 that allows it to kind of move around for them as well. We're doing all of this so that the animators can really focus on the acting and the personality and don't have to worry so much about the mechanics. So let's look at this same process with Storm. As Jay mentioned, we have the sketch model that we've kind of started in the computer. This is an early version. He's a little taller. We were kind of following McQueen's proportions a little more, so his eyes are actually a little bit higher up. And at this point, we're just looking at proportion and wheel size and making sure that things are kind of working in 3D. Then we take that idea and we start pulling that into the computer again to do 3D modeling. So this is a sped up version of me kind of starting with the lips from Storm and effectively pulling out Storm's model. So you can see how I can take these edges and I can kind of extrude it, pull it out, add detail, take these control points that are on the surface and basically start pulling them around and start shaping. And so, here's an example of Storm where he's got his body surface started. We haven't really added all the panel creases in yet. We haven't added all the door lines in yet. And we're using that sketch model that we have as a guide. And then we keep going, and eventually we're going to model every single thing on the car that you see. So in some cases, we also model things that you don't necessarily notice right away. So in this case, you're seeing we have a lot of undercarriage and suspension bits, things like the rear diffuser. And so we're really paying attention to Storm and how he looks. We wanted to continue that design that was developed in art to make him look angular and stealthy. As Jay mentioned here, he's a little lower. His windshield's braked back a little bit. He's super low to the ground, like all these next-gen race cars. They have low center of gravity, just like a real race car. So we had to really watch, for example, how close the chin was to the bottom of the road, so that he could open his mouth. So we have some cheats that allow the animators to open the mouth but not move the chin too much. Sometimes they would intersect. We call that a chintersection in animation. And so just really emphasizing that kind of low, fast quality. So here again is Storm. Now he's shaded, so you can see all the materials on him. And he has this metal black kind of metal flake paint. And nowadays when you buy a car, there's different types of paints. You get like pearlescent paints, paint with metal flake, which is actually small little flakes in the paint that's mixed in, which is what we did for him. And so, how do we create all that? We really try to ground ourselves in the real world. So, for example, we took the character team out to the Black Hawk Auto Museum. We actually came out here to Sonoma and did hot laps. It's a lot of fun. We also went to the San Francisco Auto Show, and we also looked at cars in our very own parking lot. So here's some examples of some of the research that some of the technical departments did. And a real car has a clear coat, it has this base coat of paint and primer, and we really tried to duplicate that for Cars 3. So our shading and our materials have similar behavior and similar setup. So we can actually say the clear coat has one shine and the paint has a different shine, and control how all of that works on our fake virtual cars. So here is Storm, and you can see how these different materials are now applied to him. We've got the orange on the brake calipers, and here's kind of like that decal. You can see this graphic provided by the art department that kind of gets put on the side. We did a lot of work for that kind of iridescent S. So there's special controls that lighting has to really make that kind of hurricane logo that was added to Storm. It's kind of inspired by the international sign for hurricane to really be reflective and shiny when he drives by. And here he is in the final movie. You can see it looks just amazing, and you can already just by his posing, but also that design of that model, just get the feeling that he's the newer, the faster, the lower car. And if you look at the original concept art that was provided by Art, you can see how that basically translated into the computer, into the final model. So we have McQueen, we have Storm. Let's take a look at the next vehicle, which is Cruz Ramirez, which is McQueen's trainer. So just like before, we're starting with the sketch model, just looking at proportions. You may notice our tail lights are actually a little bit older. And if you look at like some of the side here, like the fender is really leaning forward. And those are things that we're going to refine when we get into the actual model as we get further into 3D. So you can see here we've actually arced that the other way as we decided to look at that a little bit closer. And we have to model all of this detail. So again, it's just a clay, just like clay, but it's all virtual. It's all gray. It's all flat. And you see all the details from like the license plate to the logo to the diffuser, even the headlights. So let's take a closer look. Again, our software for Cars 3 is so advanced that we have to model actual reflectors and bulbs and lenses so that the light actually bounces through our lights correctly and actually behaves accurately. We didn't have to do this for the previous film, so we actually had to upgrade a number of our old characters as well up to this standard. This is Cruz's headlight and turn signal light kind of expanding out. And so here's Cruz with her final shading. You can see all that shininess and clear coat on her and how the light's responding in the final modeling. And again, she's passionate, she's energetic, she's this tech-savvy car, and we really tried to get that mix of that power with some of that European elegance, just like Jay mentioned. And so let's take a look at rigging a little bit. So this is a version of Cruz, and you can see the mouth here. I'm basically posing it, and so these are controls similar to what animators would use. And what we're doing is we're going in, and there's controls for like how the lip opens or closes, or how you can move it up and down. We have controls for the eyelids, for the brows. You can move the inner eyelid up, down, middle eyelid up, down. We can bow it, so on and so forth. We have these very extreme cartoony controls that we're basically trying to give the animators flexibility, as well as to give them the ability to have finesse and subtlety as well. So in this case, that's a control we probably wouldn't use as much on Cars 3 just because we're trying to be more true to materials. And if you look here, you can see the eyelid and the brow slide surface, you see the lip surface, and so those are the surfaces that these controls are kind of riding over. We also have to rig the suspension. So for example, we have an upper and lower A arm, which is called because it makes a triangle, just like an A. Then we have the shock or the kind of strut there as well, and that all has to be controlled automatically as well by the computer, so we rig all of that too. This is kind of a mask, so you can see like her mouth, and if you look over there, this is like a jaw open, left mouth corner, upper lip, lower lip. And so these are the areas that we're telling the computer, hey, when I pull that control, pull this part of the car around. And so here you can see that same body calisthenic, that same body pose test that we saw with McQueen, now applied to Cruz, and you're looking at all of those controls, plus a bunch of others, kind of under the hood, so to speak, as she moves around. You can see how all of that comes together, and you guys, our hope is that you don't really see all that or notice that in the film, and you're really seeing the character and the personality. But there's a lot of work done under the hood to make all of this come together. So this is the final frame example from Cruz, and I think she looks fantastic. I'm really proud of her. You can see all that detail we have from the model headlights and the reflections on her clear coat. You notice things like the tire flattening on the ground, and then some great posing animation. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jude, who is going to talk about how we animate these guys. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jude Brownbill, and I'm a directing animator on Cars 3. So I'm going to just run through this last part of this chunk of the process, animation, so where we bring the characters to life and we try and get their personalities to come out with their acting. So animating cars, we've done it before in 2 other movies. So we basically asked ourselves at the beginning, what did we learn from those first 2 films? What worked, what can we build upon and make better? Those 2 movies basically gave us a set of characters that the world and we know and love, and then a set of rules that we created, which kind of essentially is like how to convincingly make a car talk and not have people be weirded out by that. A set of rules about how, the lids in the windshield could emote, things like that. So we also asked ourselves what kind of new challenges we were going to face in this 3rd installment. So I'm going to talk about both of those things today. But let's start with what we know. So we know McQueen. Here he is in Cars. This is young McQueen, so he's confident and top of his game. He's agile and smooth when he's racing, passionate, nimble, kind of like a skier. He leans into his turns. He's a lot of the rules of the world that we kind of created in those first 2 films are demonstrated here. What about now? This 3rd installment, McQueen, he's a little bit older. He's not as agile. He's stiff. He's tense, and his body rattles a lot more here. He's basically been challenged, and he's desperate to avoid failure. So one of the things we tried to be wary of or aware of was how can we show a difference between McQueen from Cars and McQueen now in this new phase of his life. McQueen is a character that the world knows and loves, and we needed to respect that. The way that he looks, the way that he acts, it should be the same. We can't really change that. And Owen Wilson continues to add his charm and charisma to the voice of McQueen in this particular chapter of his life. But now he's bringing these extra layers of uncertainty, vulnerability, and this renewed determination to succeed. But whether he's like young McQueen or veteran McQueen, he's our baseline, and he's kind of like where we compare all the other characters to. Let's go on now to the challenges we faced. This is a still of McQueen again in Cars, and this is the final frame of Cars 3. And so here's the first challenge. If you look how beautiful this render is, it's stunning. You can see the mud on his cheek, you can see the paint flecks, you can see the the reflections in the decals, and not to mention the detail in the world around it. We knew that coming from story, we were going to get this story that was very emotionally grounded, and our renders, the renders we were looking at were very visually grounded. So our animation really had to live believably inside the detail of this world. And in terms of animation, that means we had to pull back a little bit from big, broad, cartoony movements, because these are several thousand-pound cars, and they really needed to work in a more realistic physical way, respecting physics, respecting their weight. You've probably heard it a lot before, but truth to materials, especially when they look this good, is more important than ever, really. And it also pushed us to dig just a little bit deeper in terms of the acting choices, so that all our choices would be truly reflective of this particular character in this particular moment in this world that we had created. And if all these elements coexist believably, then we, hopefully no one questions that these are talking cars, right? What else did we learn? Well, here's the next challenge. This is Storm. He is our next generation car. And we have a lot of brand new characters on our show. They're all very different from McQueen, and they're all very different from each other. So we asked ourselves in animation, what can we do to support the uniqueness of each character? And there are three basic ways we can do that. One is the way that they look. They've already been beautifully designed and modeled and shaded. But in animation, we can also control the shape of their lids and then the shape of their mouth. We can also control the way that they move, and in this world, it's predominantly how they race around the track. And then the last way is the way that they behave, so how they act, the choices that they make. We heard about Storm's design from Jay, and Michael showed you all of the rigging that goes into each character. And each character basically comes to us in animation with exactly the same set of controls. So it's kind of our job to take those controls and try and look for ways we can support the design pushing the mouth and lid shapes, because that's what we can control, into places we haven't explored before. And for Storm, this is a sketch here done by Mike Wu, who's a sketch artist and animator. And it was just, thinking about how can we take those angular and sharp design language pieces and apply it to the lids in his mouth. We put that into the rig that we got, and trying to push those asymmetrical trapezoidal mouth shapes with the straight lines, the sharp corners. We even went back to rigging and asked if we could have some extra controls to make those corners even sharper and have a little bit of extra control. And then we continue to reflect that sharp, straight language in his lids as well. As you notice, they're not as bowed even as Mcqueen's. So how about the way he moves? Well, he is, along with this really cool, sleek design, he has a very powerful and smooth engine. He's very low to the ground, tight suspension, so we had less vibration, tight turns. We didn't have him leaning into his turns in the way that Mcqueen would do. He's very strategic. He drives with precision, calculation, and we wanted it to just look almost effortless for him, so he would appear more of a threat to Mcqueen on the track. When it comes to his personality and how he acts, we knew that Storm was going to be this overconfident, kind of arrogant car. We wanted him to feel intimidating again to Mcqueen. He really only cares about himself and about winning, with no regard for his opponents or the history of the sport. Armie Hammer gave a really great, wonderfully rich voice for Storm, and he kind of helped push on those traits of confidence, arrogance, and egotism. So we took Armie's voice and we started doing our own tests with the rig early on, just to see an explore with the mouth shapes, the lid shapes, and just ways of animating him. We found that the best thing that worked with him was when we didn't really move his body that much. Oftentimes higher status characters, they don't need to move as much. They're too cool to exert any effort. So his body is very still in terms of motion. Also, he is very tight around the wheel well, so we couldn't really lift him up and move him around because that just causes intersections. So, however, we did find that when watching Armie in the PDX, when he was doing his voice work in the booth, he would over-enunciate a lot of his lines, and we like to contrast that, so minimal movement in the body but over-articulated mouth, and we felt like that we kind of hit on something kind of cool with Storm there. But the main thing we found with him was the contrast between what his eyes are saying and what his mouth is saying. So Storm could be smiling and giving Mcqueen a really nice compliment, but his eyes are basically telling you a different story. It's like, yeah, good luck, Mcqueen, it's great to meet you. So when we tried to put that kind of contrast in his animation, we found it worked really well. Next up we had Cruz. So her design, as we've heard, lies somewhere between Mcqueen and Storm. She's a powerful next-gen racer, but she also has the heart and the love, the passion for racing like Mcqueen. Again, like we did with Storm, we started by exploring how can we get those designs, sleek shapes from her body design into her mouth. And Mike Wu again did some really great sketch ideas, and we kind of experimented a lot, but landed on this paisley shape, which is kind of like an S curve with a C curve on the bottom. And when we put it inside, her rig and pushed on that a little bit, we found it felt kind of good in her design. It reflected that big personality that she has. It really pushed, it showcased her big smile. It really fit well, in her face. So we bowed her lids as well a lot more than Mcqueen, more than Storm, obviously. So she has a lot of bow in those top lids. And we even asked for some extra controls for our eyeliner so that we could push the peak of the eyeliner that you see. We could push it either left or right to kind of either enhance the attitude of her pose or to enhance the direction she was looking. But it was really great to get those extra controls. And then when it came to animating her racing, she's a trainer. She's very powerful as a trainer and full of enthusiasm and energy, but she doesn't really know how to harness that energy. She's learned to train on a simulator, which, as you know, is very different to real life. So she's a little out of control in real world settings. So we had a lot of fun in the beach sequence, which I think you saw yesterday. Just contrasting her wobbly, out of control style with Mcqueen's expertise. And then finally, how does she act? Well, Cruz, the character of Cruz, is very much based on Cristela Alonso. smart, determined, funny from really modest beginnings, trying to make it, in a field that is very unconventional. And just as the story artist had done in looking at Christella for inspiration, so did the animator. So we did spend a lot of time looking at her stand-up and her TV show, and just immersing ourselves in, everything that we could find that Christella had done, just to absorb, her acting choices, her facial expressions, and even things like her comic timing, really helped push on that character of Cruz. And we did a lot of tests like we did with Storm very early on, and we found that we could be a lot broader with her body movement. She's full of energy, she's got a big personality, and she's a really honest delivery, so in your face, honesty. But it was also important to contrast those big movements, humorous moments with those really quiet, subtle, honest moments where she's really being vulnerable. I think the most important thing we learned about Cruz overall is that she will always react with honesty and humor as a means to mask her own vulnerability. She gave up on her dream of being a trainer, so she kind of channels all her energy and all her passion into being the best trainer that she can be. She's very honest, she's very direct, she's very blunt, to the, even the surprise of Mcqueen. And when we approached her acting choices with that in mind, I think it really brought Cruz to life in a more believable and relatable way. And there we go. I'll ask my other presenters to come back up. I don't know if we have time for questions.
Do we have time?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, totally. Right, so we talked about how we have this amazing technology, it can do all these great things. We have super detailed paint and micro scratches and all this new technology and new stuff that we have. However, sometimes things don't always go as planned. So, for example, sometimes you lose your character altogether and just the eyes and the mouth show up. Sometimes when you're trying to remodel it, somebody's trying to render it and then it explodes on them due to the changes. I call this next one Quack. This is the lip controls kind of getting pulled a little bit too far, just slightly. This is Cruz, this is really kind of cool. This is her kind of de-resing. There was some texturing problem going on that day. But I kind of like it because you can see all that crazy detail that we put in that you don't normally get to see, and all the cool shading and things like that in the suspension. It's kind of fun. This is kind of like Invasion of the Eye Snatchers. I don't know, the eyes decided to glow and just go nutto on Sally there. Sometimes things sparkle, so I guess a little too bright, too shiny. I don't know. Same thing, we have Storm and Mcqueen looking very, very, very fun. And then this last one, Bobby Podesta, you're going to meet him later today. I think he's giving another presentation. He's one of he's the animation supervisor. We noticed one day he was on walkthroughs with us, and for some reason his clothing really matched the walls really well. So we made him sit in the corner and take a picture. So, yeah. So if there's any questions.
Ooh, yeah.
What would you say is the biggest difference between the rig and the setup for like a Lightning McQueen in the previous movies and this one?
That's a good question. I feel like one of the main things we did on this film compared to the other films was we really tried to be, again, more true to materials. So with McQueen, we locked his headlights down quite a bit more. Beyond that, we do try to keep what we had before and really kind of translate that. But there was a lot of work because of that to really make sure he has big, broad smiles, big, broad poses. So there was a lot of work to make sure that the corners of the mouth and the headlight and the way that rolls over really looks good. And especially with the new lighting and the new shading that we have, it's very unforgiving because it is so real. So even though it may be perfectly round, sometimes we have to go in and cheat that a little bit in the shots just to make sure that it looks correct and looks smooth.
Essentially, they're injecting Botox into the Queen's face so that parts of it freeze because the mouth is moving around so much that you don't want elements like the headlights shifting while he's smiling big or stuff like that. So.
We also kind of collaborated between animation and rigging because we found in animation we were doing a lot of copying of key curves. So when the eyes looked this way, we had to copy the midline of his lids that way, and so we were like, why don't we just have that be automated? So we kind of came up with a control. We just turn it on, and that goes with it. And so little things like that actually helped us speed up our animation. It really helped. So that was a new feature on Cars 3.
You guys talked about Lightning McQueen and making him the choices that you made to make him look and seem older, both with rigging and animation. Did you guys have any changes that you had to make to other characters from the first film, like Mater or Sally?
Well, I mean, it's funny, on the first film, the technology we had was such that we could get away with the bodies not being perfect. And like for instance on Ramon, his modeling was a little janky, but we never saw it in the film because the render quality wasn't as good as it is now. So I mean, you guys had to go back in and had to refinish some of the body sides on these cars.
Yeah, exactly. So the side panel, we had to just make sure it was perfectly smooth. Even Sally, actually, you just saw, we actually did a couple of tweaks to her front fenders over the front wheels, just because in some of the shots we're like, it looks a little like maybe it's subtly that way, and then sure enough, we looked at it a little closer halfway through the film, and we're like, okay, we'll just round that out a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's based on the whole render system, right?
And then, of course, all the headlights, as I mentioned, and taillights.
Yeah.
I mean, I think overall, we wanted to just make McQueen look not quite as cool as he was in the first one. So that was more about bringing all the other things up. So like all the other characters around him looking cooler, faster. And even on the track, we kind of pushed on the idea that he was not quite as smooth as like the new next gens. And so I think it was more in that way. Sally and animation-wise was pretty much, we treated it the same. Yeah.
In this movie, the backgrounds look photorealistic. Are they all animated? Is it all digital?
Everything you see is digital. It's pretty crazy. I mean, big shout out to the sets department. And we're talking about characters. The sets departments did a phenomenal job. Their shading and their painting just looks
There's a whole new
incredible
feel to it because you're like, that's a real world, but there's Lightning McQueen driving down.
And some of that is a lot of that is the artistry and the work and the design that's gone into it. Also the technology again that is more accurate with how it responds. So like when you're looking at Sterling's center and you see all that cool glass and reflectivity, like that's taking hundreds of hours to compute in the computer to actually get all that onto the screen for you.
It also speaks to kind of like the trilogy of his films. Like Cars 1, you look at it, it's like primary colors and punched up saturation and really simple. And this is a much more mature movie, so we've taken everything up a level.
And it's like in the first movie, Lightning's headlights were stickers, and in the second movie, he got real headlights. Yeah. But you still couldn't tell. Wait, does that look like a sticker? Or does that look like? But here, this one, you can look at it and go, that looks like a real headlight. You can tell that's a real headlight.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned Jude having to go back to Michael a couple times and the team, and say, hey, can we tweak this control? Can we add a little bit more here? How often and how frequent do you guys go back and forth and refine that?
We'd meet up quite often, wouldn't we? And it was really more just whatever came up in terms of needs that we had, and if it was like, it would be really cool if we could do this. What do you guys think? And we posed that to the characters team.
Yeah, I mean, we have a really tight collaborative spirit at Pixar, which I really love. And so it's very common. We basically, when we work on a character, we're always partnering a technical artist or a modeler, or shader, with an animator, and we're kind of working together on that. And so, like another example would be Miss Fritter from the Crazy 8 sequence. There was work done to her mouth to make her mouth sharper and more creased that we hadn't done on any of the other characters, and a lot of that kind of carried through to a lot of the other Crazy 8 characters as well. And again, that was part of that collaboration of the animator and the articulator kind of working and just talking together. So really, every character, we're always trying to have these conversations and collaborate.
Depending on the needs of the show and the character, and you can pose an idea, and characters can be like, yeah, let's try it. And so we love that collaboration.
Thanks.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
All right. Well, that was the group session. We'll get started on the one-on-one with just a couple questions that we had and call-outs for those, that the trio as well. But I should have mentioned as well, during the interview, you can hear
the race cars running around the track.
Yeah, so there's times where because we're in a box, essentially, if you will, off the track, and you can hear dishes because we had just got done eating breakfast, and so there was a crew that the kitchen was next to it. So it was like the racetrack was on the left,
kitchen's on the right.
The kitchen's on the right, and the guy coughing was to
right
my left.
Next to you.
So it was a loud environment. So hopefully you guys got some great insights out of that. And then now let's transition over to the one-on-one I had with the team, and we'll catch you on the backside of that. The first thing that I've asked everybody is favorite new character in the film.
Cruz.
Perfect.
Storm.
I love it.
I would say Storm.
I love it. All right. How about for being a car person, whether you're a full-on car person or not, favorite car in real life, whether it be a NASCAR car or a street car?
Oh, from real life?
Could be, yeah.
Well, I've always loved a Maserati from the 50s, and I forget what the number is.
That goes
It's some
along with it, right.
convoluted,
Right.
but it's beautiful, just Italian sports car.
For me, the Lamborghini Countach. I mean, growing up in the 80s, that's
classic.
the classic,
Yeah.
true exotic, kind of first exotic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd have to go with something a little more, affordable, practical. Maybe like a Tesla or something like that.
The Tesla is the number one answer that everyone has given.
Really?
Damn it.
Yes.
Wow.
You win.
You absolutely do. You win a Tesla. Okay, so then as you were also talking about, as you're rigging these characters, my mind was just like completely just off the charts going crazy because I think about rigging a human.
Yeah.
You're not rigging the esophagus and the stomach and all these other things. But as I'm seeing the design of everything, you've got drive shafts, you've got all these other things. So did you already have that background coming into it? I know you already had kind of that industrial side of it, but did you have that industrial
I didn't.
side?
This was my first Cars film, so I'm kind of a gearhead, so I kind of knew a bit about it. Jay Ward did a really good job, and we kind of had the entire modeling department go through a presentation that he gave. He actually had two. One was the history of cars, and the other one is what is the language of a car and the automotive terms and all the pieces that go into a car, so that we could talk about like the belt line or the bright work or what is the differential and all of this stuff. And so everyone kind of got that education going into it, so we know kind of knew what to do.
And now you can fix your own vehicles when they break down.
Right, just a spoon and a wrench.
You really know how to break down a headlight.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
It's true.
Yeah, totally.
Just an observation when we were watching the screener. So there was a really cool touch, I thought, that when the new next-gen racers were in the Rust-eze Racing Center, I love that they were gray, so they were like waiting for their sponsorship. while they
Primer
were
gray.
training.
Yeah.
Yes, that was just such a cool little aspect that they didn't have anything. They wanted to keep themselves fully open for when they get their sponsorship. So obviously with your role, you had some experience on Cars 2. You did a Holly Shiftwell, correct?
Yes, correct.
Of course you did, because you had the the whole British dual connection there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So did you roll your sleeves up and animate any scenes on this film?
Yeah, I was rig testing on Cruz, so I got to play with her at the very beginning when she was just being rigged and articulated. So it was nice to be able to animate some shots with her. So in this sequence where she's coming in the beach with her treadmill, and she's like, "I'm here, Mr. McQueen. You talked him into it." I actually did those shots. And then it was also great to get a chance to work on some of the more emotional moments in Cruz's dream. The very last sequence you probably saw was at the very end, her, asking McQueen, how he knew he could do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
right.
that was, a really nice moment in the film, and I was very honored and lucky to get to animate that. And then, I also got to animate Natalie Sutton. Which was
fantastic,
great.
yes.
It was a very cool character. So I really enjoyed trying to get a bit Kerry Washington into her.
Yeah, cool. One of the other things we had heard on the first film was, for somebody that was in your role, was the trickiness of Doc Hudson's lips. Like, so how do you move them in just a subtle enough way that they don't look like noodles, they're not bouncing around, but yet still make it look like he's talking accurately, especially with all that chrome and everything.
Yeah.
Was there anything that was like really tricky like that in this one that you really had to dive in based on your role and help somebody with?
Yeah, I mean, it was a similar case with some of the characters that have those chrome lips.
Like Smokey.
Smokey was one where we had a grill that we were kind of treating like his mustache, and we found that when we pushed the mouth up, and kind of had, just his bottom lip showing, that it kind of added a little something. So he kind of has to talk a little bit out of the side and the bottom of his mouth, and it's hard to make him look like he's smiling. There are ways to do it, but that was a tricky one to try and figure out. But in the end, I think putting his mouth where we put it really added to his character.
Yeah, a lot of the legends have that kind of grill, that kind of classic kind of shape up front. And all the cars that have that, and even some others like Sarge, they all have this unique kind of articulation that has to go in to make all of that work. We actually have a special rig called a grill rig. And there was a lot of experimentation done with Smokey up front, trying all these different things. And at the end of the day, it was kind of like the subtlety that actually kind of won the day. And it's kind of interesting.
I like it. Also, all the films have this very carified universe where they have, I mean, even like some of like the leaf springs in the courthouse and all these kind of things. I know you influenced quite a bit of that in the first one. Did you influence that in this one? And is there anything that like you're really like, I love that I got to squeeze this in there or anything like that?
The carification. We actually, it was Bill Cohn who, he was a production designer for Environments, my co-production designer. It was our intention early on to not do as much as that carification because we knew that this film was going to be a little bit more gritty, a little bit more real, and I think we went full tilt on it on Cars 2.
Yep. Maybe
a little bit too much. It was fun. I mean, it's great to like. It just adds another layer of stuff to look at and appreciate. But we really wanted this film to be about the characters and focus on their story. And maybe not so much be the playfulness behind them. All that said, it was only recently that John came in the room and was like, I really want a little bit more carification in this world. Only after a ton of stuff had been final rendered and all that stuff. Right. So we went back in and we easily placed, the cotter pin. We used big cotter pin, oversized cotter pins to support the front porch. Instead of just regular, banisters or supports. Bill went back into a landscape and made a mountain into the shape of. There was one as
the front end of a car.
The front end of a car. There's a spark plug gap, which looks like a spark plug.
It's definitely going to be more of a challenge to find those pieces. But they're there.
And they're there, and it's still fun. It's but they're a little bit more hidden because Bill Cohn was determined to kind of make them more naturalistic and not as overt. Like, oh, that's a spark plug, And I think that's the way it should be done. Is they should be a little bit more hidden and
All right, so that was the chat. Awesome time hanging out with Jay Shuster, Jude Brownbill, Michael Comet. I also when I was going through this, Michael Comet's voice is just so perfect to listen to. Just the I don't even know the tone of it, the timbre of it, or I don't know what I want to say, but it comes across perfectly. He needs to do like a temp track vocal. But anyways, so a couple things that were in there that I just wanted to highlight because I thought they were really interesting. So Michael talked about that it's or that when he was going through his main presentation, he was talking about just the details, and I followed up with it in the one-on-one about the headlights. If you could see this, I mean, I can't even fully describe how detailed it is, but if you think of just like a headlight in a car, it's broken down between the back reflector, all the filaments that are in there, or the LED that's in there now, and you literally, for one light inside of like Cruz Ramirez's headlight, it's broken out where you can see it like into like 15 to 20 pieces. And he talks about that they had to shade each one of those because now you can see that level of detail in this film. And they had to provide lighting controls that were different for it. I mean, just all the insane details that they had to get into was really great on this film. And you talk about like John Lasseter at the Detroit Auto Show event that we went to. He talked about that the realism is off the charts. It really is because they literally designed what an actual like CAD drawing would look like if you exploded out a headlight,
right,
and then smushed it back together, and they took care of and put all the details into all that. That was amazing. I loved as well, and I think it was Jude that was talking about this, at how they animated less vibration for Jackson, and Jackson leans less into his turns than McQueen does. It's continuing to show that difference in the age,
yes,
and the just the stealthiness. And so like I thought it was neat that like every department all the way down the line thought about what they could do to make that difference in that valley even greater between the older Lightning McQueen now and the new Jackson Storm.
Yeah, and what's funny is in the original Cars film, when Lightning is just gliding kind of very fluidly, kind of like very cartoony almost, in between all those other guys, you feel it as arrogance.
Yeah, but now when he's doing it, it's definitely jitterier. And,
Jackson moves like a shark.
It comes in like a total stealth bomber, just tight, smooth, just whoosh.
Like under the radar almost, but like
it is because he's so low to the ground too. Yeah, he's a cool character. And just all the different things. So Jude said something that I thought was an awesome animation tip too. Like for anybody that's looking to get it, she said oftentimes, and I'm quoting her, oftentimes higher status characters, and that's the British side coming out there, higher status characters, they don't need to move as much. They're too cool to exert any effort. And that's really how Jackson looks. He just comes in there and he's like, I'm not moving a whole lot. I'm just flying through this scene. I'm just
here.
Yeah. And if you think about it, even if you think of, like, we just saw Beauty and the Beast, the live action one, when Gaston comes in the room, you've got who's LeFou. He's frantic and he's all over the place. But Gaston comes in and he's like, hello, everybody. It's real smooth and fluid motions. He doesn't move as much.
You're right.
Yeah,
oh,
so I
thought
it was a cool animation tip to keep in mind. So, anyways, that's just a couple. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the interview. A couple of the extra insights that we had called out there. I know this is a longer episode, but I do want to keep the Ask Pixar Post segment going. And we did have a question from Mark F. who came in and asked the question, and I thought it was too good to not ask you. If Jurassic Park were real, would you visit it?
Yes. Are you kidding me?
Would you be worried?
No, I wouldn't be worried. I might.
The trip getting there would stink.
Well, see, I like traveling, though.
Okay, that's true.
You're not a traveler, but no, I would totally go. I might not do some attractions now that I'm a mother, but I would go.
Okay.
In a heartbeat.
Okay. I would ultimately go too, just because of how much like dinosaurs were a part of my youth, and you would feel like you were being a little kid again, plus the amazingness of seeing them.
Yes.
But I would have it in the back of my mind the whole time. I don't know if I would, like, knowing that, I don't know if I would have then I wouldn't have seen the movie.
No.
So I wouldn't already had that pretense that a disaster is going to happen.
Yeah. But is it weird that I'd want to go to Jurassic World and not Jurassic Park?
No. You go to Jurassic Park.
Well, I do want to go to Jurassic Park, but I also want to go to Jurassic World because they had a lot more dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's true. They had more, and then they had those little pods that you could, like, the balls.
Well, they had
that
like
you
the
could roll
underwater
in.
ones with the, they fed the great white shark too.
Yeah.
Which great white sharks are my favorite.
There you go.
Favorite thing.
Yeah. So, and also, just so you know, if you do have a question for us, you can email us info@pixarpost.com. And if you want to know any crazy thing, whether it be about a movie, music, whatever it might be about Pixar, Disney, just let us know. We'll answer your question. So he had one more too. Favorite character that's a circus bug from A Bug's Life.
Oh. Tuck and roll.
Okay.
You're fired. I can't do it right now because I'm getting a cold.
You did it. It's a good one. Try it again.
You're fired. No, I can't do it.
It's too deep.
Can't do it.
He's higher. He's like more like, you're fired.
You're fired. You're fired.
There you go. There it is.
I do it to our son all the time, and he just laughs.
Yeah. So, yeah, Tuck and Roll, I mean, it's hard for me to not say that they're my favorite.
Yeah, and what's crazy...
Because they're so hilarious. Just the ha-ha-ha, and then when they pluck off the antenna of Hopper, and it's like moving, and they're hitting him.
And what's crazy is those characters were created by Andrew Stanton when he was in school.
Yeah.
Like elementary school or middle school or something.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I know.
But yeah, Tuck and Roll. Because they're just funny, and they don't really have lines. They're just kind of like comic relief.
That's what makes them so funny, though. But, I mean, I mentioned
Francis.
I mentioned it before that I love Ratzenberger doing the PT Flea line. But I feel bad, too, because he's only in it for a short period of time. But what I love about him is not only his voice, of course, because it works so perfectly for PT Flea, but the scene and how it's animated is awesome. When he's doing Flaming Death. Yes, just when he sees it coming and he's like piecing it all together that this is like, I'm stuck here. And he's like...
And the fly paper comes down.
The slow-mo like peel away and like the individual like hairs on him are peeling off. It's just, I love the animation of that particular moment so much. So I'm still going to say Tuck and Roll because they're hilarious.
Yeah.
But I love the animation specifically and the vocal work of Ratzenberger there.
I mean, I do like Heimlich, too. He's funny, too, because I love when Dot was like, they told us to, draw someone dying to make it more realistic.
Yeah, you do love your Heimlich as well.
Yeah.
And obviously, I do, too. He's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's probably one of my all-time favorite characters. Like, he's in the top 5, but yeah.
We've been on a kick of it, and recently we've been watching it a lot.
We've been watching a lot because our son's been watching it a lot lately.
And then the "you're fired"
You're
part.
fired.
Yeah.
You're fired.
Yeah. That was it. That was the best one. All right, so on that note, that about wraps up the show. What do you think?
That sounds good.
All right, so be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Lastly, if you like today's show, let us know. Rate us on iTunes. It really, truly does help. Leave us a comment on our site or send us an email at info@pixarpost.com. We'd love to hear from you. A couple shout-outs from the last episode, and I meant to bring this up, so we'll have to follow up with this one next time, is Paulina D. wanted to know more about your bus fire incident when you were telling that story from an episode or so ago.
Oh, yeah.
And then Don S., I really appreciate, he wrote in after the last episode and let us know how much he enjoyed our talk about how Disney films as well as Pixar films are tied to major events in our lives. And when we think of that film, we think of that moment in our life. And he shared some awesome stories of how he's connected with Disney films throughout his life. So really, really cool stuff. So thanks again for those comments, everybody. Be sure to send them in. We love hearing them. So signing off as usual, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And be sure to stay tuned to PixarPost.com all week for the latest Pixar news. Bye-bye.